Recently, I got an email from a friend who lives in Canada, and she wanted to know what I think about what is going on in the Western world when it comes to matters of politics, social life, religious matters. She finds that people have been moving to the extremes. There's a huge polarization of all the subjects. All the discussions have that kind of polarization. And she was worried. She is a Christian, she goes to church, she lived in France, and she was worried that what she used to see as the true teaching of the church has been hijacked in those attitudes, by those attitudes of moving to the extreme, to the far right or to the far left. And that is a huge problem. It's a common problem to the African migrants living in Europe. Those who are Christians, they become victims of that. I will use an example to illustrate what I'm talking about. She said that once she went with friends who said that they were Catholics. She used to meet them at church. They went in this huge uh, manifestation they had for to fight same-sex marriage. And while they were marching, they had a group of the people who were Catholics who prayed at the same church, who started chanting no to immigration, no to people who come from Africa, no to Muslims, no to homosexuals, combining everything. So they were chanting all kinds of hate words that she was confused. She understood that these people were not marching for the church or to protect any doctrine of the church, to defend it from some views that might be seen by some as dangerous, but they had a full agenda to chant anything that is from the far right, and that includes uh, some racist statements against immigrants from Africa. And she was one of those immigrants. Of course, she had conservative views. She used to find me very liberal, and she would argue with me when she was here, telling me, no, you have to teach the doctrine we got in our youth. It is not because you went to Europe that you should bring to Rwanda things you learned from Europe, from South Africa. And she got confused. These were people whom she thought they had the same point of views, but she was mistaken. The thing is that in Africa, we still have many subjects that we treat as if we were still before Vatican II. We still look at the people from other regions as heretics. In many, many places in Africa, even bishops encourage people by hate speeches. When they are talking about Muslims and other religions, they encourage people to dissociate themselves from the unbelievers. Not because they don't know what the Vatican taught about that or other documents, what the Pope today and many commissions in the world say about our relations with other um, traditions, religious traditions. They only want to hold on the things that we see from the missionaries, maybe because the Vatican II happened a few years after we got our first evangelization. So the people who grow in that kind of climate and become unknowingly become very conservative traditionalists sometimes, when they move to Europe, sometimes they become happy to find other groups that have the same kind of views, but they get disappointed very quickly when they see that people take everything in a package. They combine politics, social life, liturgical matters, faith issues, and they put everything in the same box. And they include in that things that would shock those who come from other places in the world, like Africans who go to France. That is the example that I know something about. They might be very conservative without them knowing that they're conservatives who go to Europe want to go to church. Sometimes they are unlucky to go to a church where they would find some youth that are very much on the far right, and they would become victim. They would go in confusion. Some of them would leave the church thinking that maybe the things we were taught were not true, or that the church is no longer the same, united. Most of them, they don't get a chance to talk to somebody who might have some insight. I'm not saying that I understand fully what is happening. I know that so many young people in Europe are making a statement that maybe the secular way of looking at things is not the perfect way, and it can be there, but in a balanced way, not fighting against religion. But they might do that going to the extreme, because that is the trend today. Everybody is doing that, and that becomes dangerous. And when people who come from Africa go there and they find, or one attitude, a very secular church or a very conservative church, they get confused. If they did not do any deep teaching, theology, they might be very confused. We don't have situations where bishops or theologians would have conferences. And when you have conferences, the people who would attend would be a small number. And the theologians who would speak, they would be scared to introduce the new teaching that they know. Not that it replaces the teaching that was there, but that it gives new insights of how the church looks at on certain matters, a few new ways of looking at very current issues. So what I would tell to these people who ask me questions, what do you think about those attitudes? I think that Europe and the Western world is going through a crisis, but it has achieved much through the Enlightenment, the period of the Enlightenment. They confronted ideas, philosophy, they discuss, and that is what we need in Africa. Today we have to discuss, to know what people believe, not only to say they have moved away from the faith. No, not entirely. Maybe they have new ways of opening themselves to the Holy Spirit. As we see it happening in the Bible, the things you see the people of the time of Moses doing are not the same things you see the people of the time of Jesus doing. Today, we are no longer doing the things of the people of the time of Jesus. We no longer have slaves. The first Christians had slaves in their homes, and they used to find that that was okay. The church in the first centuries was for slavery, until the time when the church became a champion to fight against slavery. So we don't look at things the same way from the beginning to now. There are many things that are changing for the better. There might be things that are changing for the worse, but I believe that people grow in spirituality, in understanding, and they open themselves to the Holy Spirit. So, a message to my fellow African friends who go to Europe and find themselves in those kinds of climates, get confused. Maybe it is not entirely the fault of the West. It is also because in your own countries you don't have debates, you don't have platforms where you can confront new ideas and see if those ideas might be a new way of the Holy Spirit trying to talk to us with our new knowledge, with our new wisdom, with our new maturity. Maybe we should encourage people to discuss more in Africa, and let us not pretend that we know everything, that our culture tells us everything, that we got everything from the missionaries. So if they gave us everything, why did they go back to their country and start debating on things that are known? We should be open to those platforms and not just be disappointed when we get to Europe and think that it is the end of the world. Have a nice weekend.